If you've been around gaming for any amount of time, you know the name FaZe Clan. They weren't just a team. For a while there, they were the culture. But what happens when a giant like that falls? Well, this is the wild story of a huge reboot, a crazy comeback, and then a shocking collapse, all in just over a year. So the big question is, how does a brand that basically defined a whole generation of gamers go from this massive celebrated comeback to a complete and total implosion? That's what we're going to break down today. And the whole story really starts with the return of its founders.
You know, before this whole reboot thing was even an idea, FaZe Clan was pretty much on life support. After they went public, the company was just bleeding money. Their creative direction was, well, it was a mess. And that core identity that all the fans fell in love with, it was fading and fast.
And this timeline, wow, it really shows you just how fast the whole thing fell apart financially. So, in January 2023, their stock is so low they get a delisting warning. By September, the stock has absolutely cratered, down 98%, and the CEO gets fired. Then, just a month later, the entire company, which was once valued at $1 billion, gets sold for only $17 million to a company called GameSquare. But GameSquare had a pretty surprising plan for a comeback.
This right here was the massive turning point. See, the GameSquare acquisition wasn't just a sale, it was like a homecoming. The original founders, Banks, Temper, and Apex, were put right back in charge as CEO, President, and COO. The OGs had returned to save the very thing they built from scratch.
And Banks, as the new CEO, he did not waste any time. He immediately set this new, kind of ruthless tone. This quote was a warning shot, really. It was a clear message that the old days of a bloated, directionless roster were over. A new, aggressive vision was coming, and it wasn't going to be pretty for some people.
So Banks' first move, it was immediate, and it was brutal. The idea was, to bring FaZe back to its roots, he first had to tear the whole thing down. This became known as the FaZe Reboot, or maybe more accurately, the Great Purge.
17. Just let that sink in for a second. That's how many longtime content creators got kicked from FaZe Clan in April 2024. This wasn't just, trimming some fat. This was a complete teardown of the roster that everyone knew.
And this chart just puts the scale of it all into perspective. You're talking about guys like Blaze, who had been there for almost a decade, and even Rain, one of the most famous faces from the early days of FaZe. The message was loud and clear: nobody was safe. The only ones left were this tight-knit group of the founders and their closest friends.
So why do something so drastic? Well, Banks didn't pull any punches. He went public saying the vision for FaZe was broken and that some members were just, in his words, greedy pigs. For him, this whole purge was about survival and making the brand bigger than any one person.
All right, so with the old guard gone, it was time to rebuild. The new mission was to create a FaZe Clan for the modern streaming era. And Banks and his team started looking for a new wave of talent right away.
And these were the new faces. This was a huge cultural shift. Instead of just Call of Duty players, FaZe signed some of the most popular streamers on Twitch: Jason the Ween, Lacey, Plockboy Max, and Silky. Each one of them had a massive, young, and super dedicated audience. They were brought in to create this new, always-on, creator-first era for the brand.
But the real defining moment for this new phase was something absolutely massive. A month-long, 24/7 live stream they called the FaZe Subathon. The whole new roster moved into a house and just streamed everything, all the time. It was a non-stop content machine, and the internet was completely hooked.
And the numbers, they were just insane. According to FaZe's parent company, that one event pulled in over 1 billion impressions and 2.2 billion minutes watched. The reboot wasn't just working, it was a runaway success. It really felt like they had taken back the internet.
And the rest of the industry definitely took notice. At the Streamer Awards in late 2024, FaZe Clan won Best Content Organization. This was it. This was the absolute peak of the reboot. They'd gone from nearly bankrupt to the top of the content world in less than a year. But, as you can probably guess, all this public success was hiding a foundation that was already starting to crumble.
Yeah, so behind all the awards and the crazy viewership numbers, there were some deep, structural problems and a whole series of scandals that would unravel everything the reboot had built, and fast.
Okay, so to really get what happens next, you have to understand this one critical detail about how the company was set up. After the sale, FaZe was split in two. You had FaZe Media, which was Banks and all the content creators, and then you had FaZe Esports, all the competitive teams, which was still fully owned by GameSquare. This split between the creators and the corporate side, it would turn out to be fatal.
And this timeline, man, it just shows you how quickly everything went completely off the rails. In July 2025, Banks resigns as CEO because of a crypto scandal. Basically, he was accused of a pump and dump. A month later, their new star, Plaqueboy Max, just quits, calling the creators puppets. Then in September, co-founder Temperer gets removed after some serious public allegations. The leadership was just totally imploding.
And all that chaos, it brings us to the final catastrophic event. A massive fight over money and control that led to almost everyone leaving, right on Christmas Day 2025.
The whole conflict really came down to one guy, Matt Kalish, a major investor in FaZe Media. After months of failed negotiations about the company's future, Kalish reportedly just gave the creators an ultimatum. Sign this new, non-negotiable contract, or you can walk.
In this right here, this was the deal breaker. The new contract demanded that all the creators give 20% of all their earnings from streams, sponsorships, everything back to FaZe Media. For over a decade, FaZe members kept 100% of their own money. This wasn't just some small change, it was a fundamental shift, and it was a line they were not going to cross.
The result? A total exodus. And just look at who left. These weren't new guys. These were the absolute pillars of FaZe. Adapt and Apex, both with 14 years in the clan. Rug with 13. The original guard, the guys who built the brand from nothing, all chose to leave.
And this quote from FaZe Adapt, it just says it all, really. For these guys, FaZe wasn't just a job, it was their entire adult life. To see them walk away like this, it just shows you how bad the situation had really become.
And when the dust finally settled, this is what was left to FaZe's content creator roster. 3. Just 3 people. The entire empire they had just rebuilt, the success of the subathon, all of it gone in just 72 hours. FaZe Media was, for all intents and purposes, dead.
Which leaves us with this one big, hanging question. FaZe Clan was built by creators, by personalities. The esports teams, which are really all that's left now, they always fed off the cultural energy those creators built. So with the heart and soul of the brand now gone, can the FaZe name actually survive on just winning tournaments? Or was the magic in the creators all along?